Hi, welcome to the Natasha and Debbie show.
So the video we're going to be looking at today is something that we've actually had held for over a year.
About a year.
Over a year. We're going to talk about that in just a moment and then take a look at it. But before we do that, if you like our show and the content we put out here on, I almost said Facebook. This is YouTube, right?
This is YouTube.
Please hit the like button. We'd appreciate it.
And also consider subscribing. It's absolutely free.
So today we're going to take a look at The Blitz, a short documentary. Now, just a couple things I just want to quickly say about that. We weren't going to put a video up here and say, oh, we didn't know about the Blitz. We've never heard about the... Yes, we have.
We have.
We have. And to our fellow American counterparts, you have too. So when we see thumbnails of, I've never heard of this, we didn't get taught this in school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you did. We definitely were taught about the Blitz in school.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for me and Debbie, that was 500 BC.
Absolutely it was. So, unfortunately, we don't always remember the details of it.
I do not. I don't know, besides London, what areas were hit, destroyed. Let's call it what it was. On top of that, if you know we're in Cincinnati, Ohio, then you might know. You probably don't. But our mayor was none other than Jerry Springer, who just sadly passed away. Mm-hmm. And he actually was also our local newscaster for many years.
Before being mayor.
Yeah, and one of his children went to my high school, and I had lunch with Jerry quite a few times. And also, I bring that up because I know he was born, I believe, in the London Underground. And it was during, I don't know if it was during the Blitz, per se. I think it was a few years later, but I'm not sure. In the comments, please let us know. And I also just want to say this before we go on to the video. If you've lost family during the Blitz, neighbors, friends, please, in the comments section, put their name. We did something similar when we looked back at the story of the unknown warrior, and we asked you guys to put in your soldiers, your veterans, your warrior. And you did, and I still go back to this day. It's been almost over 2 years now, I think, since we did the episode. And I look back at those comments and read the names that you guys put in. So in the comments today, if you know anybody that lost their lives or served, during the Blitz, please, during that time, put their name in the comments. Now, having said all that, like I said, we know about the Blitz, but we don't really know about the Blitz in a lot of ways because memory, right?
The details. And yeah, memory. It's been so long since we've learned about it. So it's hard to keep that in the brain and remember it.
Yeah, and I don't know how much we didn't have picture books in school.
Right.
So I don't really know what I've seen. I've seen movies with things of it in there. But I don't know that I've actually seen real footage or real photographs. So this will be a first for that. As far as I know, it's a first for that. But we're going to learn. It's a short video. I did try to find a longer one, but they were all copywritten. So we'll probably watch on our own time after this, something that's more in depth. Okay, that was a lot. Thank you for staying with us on that part if you did. And I appreciate it. And this is going to be a tough one, but we're going to watch The Blitz, a short documentary.
On the 7th of September 1940, a year into World War II, Germany launched an unprecedented bombing raid on London. Until this point, German bombers had focused mainly on military targets. Now they turned their attention to civilian ones, in an attack that killed 450 and injured 3 times that number.
I would think so.
Moreover, this attack marked a drastic change in German tactics. From this day forward, London would be bombed almost every single night for the next 57 nights.
I do remember
in a sustained campaign of destruction that became known as the Blitz.
Blitzkrieg, right?
In 1940, France surrendered to German invaders. This left Germany, under the command of dictator Adolf Hitler, to focus its attention on Britain. Hitler had a strong desire to carry out a full-scale invasion of Britain, but there was one obstacle that stood in his way: Britain's Air Force. The Royal Air Force, or RAF, was formidable. Though it had far fewer aircraft than the German Luftwaffe, its pilots were highly motivated to defend their country.
Yes, they were.
And were bolstered by volunteers from around the world. Britain's use of the new technology of radar was also much more advanced than Germany's, giving them a significant edge when it came to responding to incoming attacks. On top of this, German attackers had many different objectives: destroying facilities on the ground, engaging in the air, and targeting and blockading ships in the waters around Britain. British fighters, on the other hand, were focused almost entirely on engaging the German threat.
Which makes
This
sense.
singular purpose, combined with technology like the highly maneuverable Spitfire, allowed Britain's relatively small force to withstand one German attack after another.
We have lucky enough here in Cincinnati too. Well, it's outside of Cincinnati, but we have the National Air Museum, and we have seen Spitfires there.
Yes,
they
in
have
person.
a couple of them. Yeah, there that were used in the war, which is really neat. And what a really cool plane that they are. Jet. I like the front of it. It's just, but it's neat to see that, and then to know we've actually seen that in person.
Britain's relatively small force to withstand one German attack after another. Germany's superior numbers, however, eventually started to wear down the RAF. Were it not for a chain of events that took place in August 1940, it's likely that Germany would eventually have prevailed.
Oh, really?
It was late in August when some German bombers accidentally dropped their payloads on civilian areas near London. Up until this point, Germany had aimed mainly for military targets, and so it was a shocking development that they should.
Did he say
appear to
accidentally?
target civilians.
I think he did.
Did he just was it intentional to start this on civilians?
It was late in August when some German bombers accidentally dropped their payloads on civilian areas
I
near
don't remember
London.
that.
Up until this point, Germany had aimed mainly for military targets.
Okay.
And so it was a shocking development that they should appear to target civilians.
Nice. Yeah.
In response, on the 25th of August 1940, Britain bombed Berlin,
Of course they would.
enraging Hitler to the point that he commanded a change in strategy. German planes would now focus on decimating British cities, London in particular.
Who was London?
The British government had long feared that Germany would launch a campaign against the civilian population. Some preparations had already been made. In 1939, thousands of children had been evacuated from urban areas to the countryside. Shelters had also been distributed to city dwellers. Anderson shelters were
That's really kind of a smart move to move the children out to the rural areas.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming as many people as possible also.
He didn't say what other cities besides London.
Right. No, he didn't.
I don't know if he's going to cover that. If he doesn't in the comments, please let us know. I hope he does. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Shelters had also been distributed to city dwellers. Anderson shelters were buried in back gardens, while Morrison shelters could be installed inside the home.
Jeez.
Blackouts had also been enforced in many urban areas to make it difficult for enemy planes to locate their targets.
It's a scary, horrific
Beyond these
time.
preparations, though, life had continued with some semblance of normality.
How?
People went to work as normal, gathered in pubs and cinemas, and went about their daily business in cities that were, for the most part, intact.
Wow.
This all changed on the 7th of September 1940, a day that would later become known as Black Saturday. On this day, a massive German raid killed over 450 people and wounded more than 1,500 in London alone.
Jeez.
Shocking and devastating as it was, Black Saturday was just a taste of what was to come. After this date, bombing raids continued almost every night. Population centres such as Liverpool, Bristol, Manchester, Cardiff, Glasgow and Southampton were targeted.
Oh my
But
gosh.
London-
Okay, well, he answered that question. Bristol. Not my Bristol. I didn't know that. What areas again?
Continued almost every night. Population centres such as Liverpool, Bristol, Manchester, Cardiff, Glasgow and Southampton were...
Oh, wow. They went everywhere with
All the
that.
big
Okay, I
places.
did not know that. And I don't even remember. Yeah, I think we focused on London Blitz when we were in school.
Yeah.
I don't remember any of that. Wow.
But it does make sense. The highly populated areas would be the ones that they were hitting. And could you imagine?
No, I
every
can't.
night-
I'm looking at the pictures just going,
I know.
No, I can't.
Devastation.
You know, we've seen just a couple things in some videos, like sprinkled throughout, like a piece of something in London that's still there, you know, that shows something from that. And it's just, and then we see stuff in London and different places. And you really can't, from what we've seen at least, tell that this monstrous, disastrously huge, tragic happened.
Right.
It's impressive, you know, and even when we watched the video on Berlin, it was impressive
How
too.
well rebuilt
The rebuilding
everything is.
that you guys did was just absolutely
It's
impressive.
incredible.
I don't have another word.
Mhm.
And yeah, this is, wow. I didn't know all those areas.
Were targeted, but London was subjected to by far the most intense bombing campaign of all. These raids were devastating.
Yeah.
Whole streets were obliterated. Churches, schools, cinemas, hospitals, and pubs were flattened or consumed by flames. Air raid sirens
hate
rang
war.
out every night, sometimes multiple times each night. Most citizens were, on a daily basis, exposed to death, destruction, and scenes of absolute horror.
Wow.
They lived their lives ready at a moment's notice to flee to shelters, where
That's
they'd spend hours huddling
horrible.
cold and afraid as explosions rang out through the city above. When the all clear finally sounded, they would emerge to fight fires, clear rubble, bury the dead, and treat the injured, knowing that, in all likelihood, the same thing would happen again the next night, and the next, and the next. Many famous London landmarks were damaged but not destroyed. Buckingham Palace, the Imperial War Museum,
I
the
didn't
Tower
know
of
that.
London, the London Zoo, St Paul's Cathedral, and the Houses of Parliament were all hit.
I honestly did not know that.
Right.
That's, again, look at it now. You can't tell.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Didn't
there's
realize-
spots.
So the Buckingham Palace and
Yeah.
the Parliament.
Yeah. I just recently was talking to a friend that I've made from here, and she was telling me, we were talking about tornado sirens and stuff here we had going off last week. And she said, oh, well, we don't really have that happen very often, but we still use the old air raid sirens from World War II. And I just was like, wow. I never thought of that.
That's true.
But just hearing that, yeah. Okay, yeah, that's the zoo,
I know, that's
the zoo.
horrible.
The Zoo, St
hospitals,
Paul's Cathedral, and the Houses of Parliament were all hit, but survived.
schools.
In no small part thanks to the heroic work of firefighters in the city. While many famous buildings were saved, thousands of ordinary homes and workplaces
I'm sure
were
they were
not.
gone. Yeah.
The Docklands area of London, home to many working-class families, was particularly badly hit. The nearby docks were a desirable target, and
Jeez.
so attracted many bombs.
Oh, that's Churchill.
This combined with a shortage of space in shelters and very few resources for rebuilding bomb-damaged areas to make the Docklands one of the places most severely affected.
Mm.
Despite the unending horror of the Blitz, though, life carried on. People went to work and some pubs, theatres and cinemas remained open. People
You know,
were
I
often
just have to
pictured-
say this. I'm sorry, but you guys, like, that's impressive. Because
Mhm.
it's just impressive that you continued on. I mean, what else can you do, I guess, in a way? But, I mean, I would...
Yeah.
No, I'm not that strong of a person. I couldn't have carried on like that. I would have just been hiding the entire time. But it's impressive.
Yeah, I can imagine having to walk through all that rubble to go to the cinema.
Just the fear of it happening any second.
Mhm.
Or was it just strictly at nighttime? Was there ever any daytime attacks? Let us know, please. I don't know.
and some pubs, theatres and cinemas remained open. People were often pictured carrying on with their day-to-day work despite the devastation around them. There are many examples of people using humour as a way of dealing with the horrific conditions of the Blitz, and pictures from the time appear to document a sense of
Wow.
cheerful endurance.
Keep calm and carry on.
The attitude that prevailed, at least according to official accounts, was typified by the now famous morale-boosting campaigns run by the British government, with slogans like, "Your courage, your cheerfulness, your resolution will bring us victory,"
I haven't seen that one before,
and "Keep calm and carry on."
but it wasn't
This
distributed.
Blitz spirit is something that is often fondly remembered and has become a point of national pride, but at the same time it represents only some of the story. Subjected
imagine.
to nightly near-death experiences, many people suffered a range of mental health problems,
Just wondering about
But
that.
night
Imagine.
terrors, bedwetting, nervous collapse and psychosis.
I think so.
Some gave up on seeking shelter when the air raid sirens sounded. In the blackout-darkened streets, crime was at an all-time high, and there were few resources to combat it.
Wow.
Fear and nervous tension were pervasive. Personal records from the time reflect the fact that almost everyone was terrified and suffering,
Of course.
but had no
imagine.
choice but to carry on with their lives. The fact that they did carry on was viewed by the government as evidence of high morale among civilians,
Well,
and
absolutely.
this was used extensively for propaganda purposes. In fact, the stress and suffering of the British people was made worse due to the government not providing adequate shelters. Anderson shelters were damp and cold and would provide protection only from shrapnel, and not from an actual bomb blast.
Well, no, of course not.
Morrison shelters would protect those inside from collapsing buildings, but not from the fires or thick choking clouds of dust that often followed. Some dedicated shelters were built using incorrect materials, resulting in them simply crumbling when hit.
But did you really have time to make adequate shelter?
No.
Adequate? I mean, did you really have the time for that?
No, didn't.
I would say no. I think you did the best you could with what you had.
Exactly.
I mean, I wouldn't be criticizing anyone for that, but I don't know. So I apologize if that's the wrong thing to say, but that's just my personal thoughts hearing that for the first time.
I mean, 57 nights straight.
Yeah.
You don't really have time to prepare.
Well, and if it was an accidental drop, you didn't know it's coming anyway. I mean, I think did they already have these shelters prior to that? I assume so. But either way, you still don't know. And then the resources. You're using all your resources for everything else during the war.
Right.
So I just think that's that picture that I paused on. Whew.
Sky full of planes.
It's just haunting. I just want to go back to that. So
I can imagine sleeping in a
it's a cage.
Like
Yeah,
that.
looks like a cage.
And it does make sense. It would help you with the falling building, but like they were saying, the smoke, the dust, the fire.
Well, I wonder how you get out of that, with stuff on top. Is there a way out on the sides? I don't know anything about these. I've never seen these before in my life. And that just, sorry, it's just a lot.
Clouds of dust that often followed. Some dedicated shelters were built using incorrect materials,
Such as?
resulting in them simply crumbling when hit, providing little or no protection. There was great demand for deep underground shelters.
Yeah, so this is what I was referring to at the beginning of the episode, is I think this is where Jerry Springer was born in this time. And I've seen a picture or two like this in the past, and that never ceases to give me goosebumps. I mean, it was a great usage of it, for sure. But I couldn't imagine.
Definitely.
I don't know how many people were down there. Again, in the comments, if you have family or friends that, in the past or whatever, that that you've lost to the Blitz, that served in the Blitz too as well, please leave their name in the comments. We'd like to honor them.
Yes, we would.
Oh, boy.
There was great demand for deep underground shelters, similar to those that the government had constructed for its own personnel. But the government was reluctant to provide these, fearing that if they were available to ordinary people, those ordinary people might retreat underground and never leave, thus hampering the war effort. As a result, Londoners were initially forbidden from using the tube network for shelter.
Really?
Desperate, many Londoners did so anyway by buying tickets and refusing to leave the station during air raids.
I didn't know that.
It was only after an escalating series of protests that the government relented
and
allowed ordinary people to shelter in tube stations deep below ground.
Wow.
These proved popular and were soon fitted with toilets, beds, medical facilities, and
That's
more.
where I would be.
Yep.
These shelters, of course, were not without their hazards.
Oh, I'm sure.
Some years later, in 1943, 173 people died in a crush at Bethnal Green Underground Station.
Oh.
The worst single loss of civilian life during World War II to take place in the UK.
Oh, man.
As shelters were developed and people adapted to the hellish uncertainty of life under Blitz conditions, the bombing raids continued up and down the country. London was hammered night after night, while attacks on other cities were more sporadic but were devastating when they came. On the 14th of November 1940, the city of Coventry was devastated by a particularly prolonged raid, which flattened 4,300 homes.
Oh my God.
The destruction was so comprehensive that some German leaders would thereafter use the word Coventriet or Coventried as a byword for total destruction.
Awful.
In May of 1941, after an unimaginable period of near-daily raids, the Blitz came to an end,
Thank God.
called off by Hitler himself.
Really?
He now wished to send his forces east to fight the Soviet Union, and could not spare the air power needed to continue the relentless attack. Unbeknownst to him, however, the Blitz that he had overseen had already changed the course of the war, though not in the way he had hoped. Hitler's shift in focus from hitting military targets to hitting population centres had allowed the Royal Air Force a chance to recover, rebuild, and reinforce. Had the Luftwaffe continued to strike military targets, Britain's forces would have been decimated. As it was, they now stood a fighting chance against the German war machine. The people of London, Liverpool,
That's
Manchester,
crazy.
and other British
That's
cities
insane.
who survived the Blitz survived a living nightmare,
Yeah.
sometimes with very little protection or support.
Living hell.
Their suffering, at least, was not for nothing.
A lot different when you're seeing
What do you say?
that footage like that.
Yeah.
I have to say, it seems like people were of a different cloth back then.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
The conditions that they survived, lived through, fought through, just to get on with daily life was incredible.
Being able to even carry on with
Mhm.
normal. There's nothing normal
Yeah.
about that. There's nothing normal about war. You know, we do a lot of military things here on the show, and we love the militaries. We don't love war. It's a misconception we've had from a lot of people
Absolutely.
in comments in years past and videos past. We hate war. We absolutely hate war.
Mhm.
So watching something like this, it's just,
It's heart wrenching to
yeah.
see what.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear about war, but then the actual results of it, how people are affected by it.
But the whole, keep calm, carry on attitude, even though we just recently found out that, that poster, that propaganda piece was not actually distributed at that time.
Mhm.
It was the attitude of the people, and it is impressive. And like Debbie said, cut from a different cloth. I agree.
Mhm.
But it's hard to think about being in that type of spot yourself, if you haven't been.
Right.
And obviously we have not been. I don't wish to be. Again, the RAF,
Amazing.
badasses in the sky. Let's just call it what they are. Again, guys, if you have lost someone in your family or friends, someone you know from the Blitz, someone that served in the RAF or any other part of the military at that time, please leave their name in the comments today. We'd like to read their names, honor them, and hear just see their names. And we appreciate you watching this episode with us. If you have any other information pertinent to this specific time and more about the other areas too, we'd like to know about that too. Like I said, it's a short video, so it didn't give us a ton of information. I know there's a lot more that happened than what they told us here, but still good information to have. I have nothing else to say at this point. Thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next episode. And until then, as always, please love like jazz.
Be as strong as Tyson.
Bye, guys.
Bye.